A while back I posted this video and it got lots of views because you guys want to understand better how to use basic strategy. Today we're going to talk kind of along a similar line, but we're going to do more with deviations. For example, a 16 versus a dealer's 10 is one of the most common deviations. All right, and we're going to do this today in kind of 5 different stages, starting with these 3 hands, right? We have a 16 versus a dealer's 10, a 12 versus a dealer's 3, as well as a 15 versus a dealer's 10. All right, these I'm going to call, well, I guess let's just go over kind of what happens with each of these hands. First off, basic strategy would tell us that a 16 versus a dealer's 10, we should normally hit this. All right, but there's a deviation to stand at any positive running count. Whereas a 12 versus a dealer's 3, same idea here. Normally going to hit, but we're going to stand when the true count gets to be +2 or higher. And then likewise, a 15 versus a dealer's 10, this one also is going to normally be a hit, but we're going to stand when the true count becomes a +4 or higher. All right, so with all these, we should normally hit, but we're going to stand when the count gets high enough. Now, have you ever thought about why? Well, the reason for each of these is that there are more high cards left in the shoe when the count gets high enough, all right? And that's why I want to deviate, because in each of these situations, when that count gets high enough, with those higher cards left, you are more likely to bust in each of these situations as opposed to taking a card when the count normally calls for it, all right? So we are deviating in these 3 situations because we are more likely to bust. Now, does that mean that you are going to win every hand? No, it does not. All right. In fact, a 16 versus a dealer's 10, this is actually going to, you're likely going to lose this hand no matter what you do, whether you hit or you stand. That's why if you are able to surrender, that is the best case scenario, because you only lose half your bet, as you are more likely to lose more than that, whether you hit or stand. However, as the count gets higher and higher, you should stand on this because you're more likely to lose by standing when the count is high as opposed to when the count is low when it says to normally hit. All right, so I'm going to sweep these cards off. I'm going to talk about the next type. Remember, we're doing 5 different types today. And I kind of have to put out 3 different dealer's cards as I do these. So this first one is a 12 versus a dealer's 5. The next one is a soft 15 versus a dealer's 4. By the way, stop saying soft 15. Okay, I should probably stop saying soft 15. You should view this, if you're a card counter, as ace 4. All right, in your head, you should think ace 4, ace 4. If you think soft 15, I think that's just going to slow you down. So a little pro tip for you. All right, and then the third one in this category is going to be a 13 versus a dealer's 2. Now, in each of these situations, let's again go through them, what basic strategy says, and then we're going to talk about how we should deviate and why that deviation is necessary. Okay, so a 13 versus a dealer's 2. Normally, this is going to stand, but we're going to hit when the true count is a -1 or lower. A soft 15 or ace 4 versus a dealer's 4, this is normally a double down, but we're going to hit when the true count, actually this one is a running count, when the running count is any negative running count. And then lastly, a 12 versus a dealer's 5, kind of a similar, this one, we're going to normally stand, but when the true count is a -1 or lower, then we are going to hit this, okay? So in each of these situations, we're either normally standing or doubling down, right? And then we're deviating by hitting once the count drops too far. So in these situations, the reason why we deviate that way is because when the count gets low enough, now there's more low cards left, and because of that, we're likely to make our hand, all right, instead of maybe banking on busting, all right, if we were to normally hit, we're likely to more like make our hand against the dealer's 2. And sometimes the reason is about our hand, right? And other times it's about what the dealer's up card is. Okay, probably a good example in this case is this 13 versus the dealer's 2. This one is probably more about the dealer's up card being a 2 as opposed to our hand being a 13. Now they're both important, and some might argue equally as so, but I would say this one probably is more the dealer's likely more likely to make their hand when the count drops below a -1 than they are to bust, right? They're probably not going to pull a runner 10, right? 10-10 to get 22 for a total. If the count is negative, right, below a -1, then one of those cards is probably not going to be a 10. That's just the way that the math works out that way. And so because of that, we should also, 13 is relatively safe when the count is low to hit this, right? There's only the 4 10s, right? 10, Jack, Queen, King, or a 9 that would bust you, excuse me. Everything else, you would be safe in that range, okay? And when the count's even lower, you are more likely to get one of those lower cards, right? And then similar reasons for these other ones. With this one specifically, an ace 4 versus a dealer's 4, here, normally it calls for a double down. Now, doubling, we're going to talk a little bit more about later, is when you have the advantage. So when the count is negative, we kind of, you might say, lose that advantage. We don't have as high of an advantage. And so therefore, doubling, it's probably not worth that extra bet, right? When we double down, we have to put equal amount of money out there. In this case, $5,000. That'd be a lot, but that's not in my bankroll range. But anyway, it's not worth that extra bet because the count is negative. Again, that dealer is likely to probably make a hand as opposed to pull a couple of high cards and bust when they might be more likely to bust when they have a 5 or a 6. Okay, so kind of think about those hands in that regard. All right, that brings me to the third type. So let me sweep these out of the way for us. Again, we're doing 5 total types here, so this is our third out of 5. And we have, get them all out here. By the way, I had to set all these up, so if you appreciate videos like this where you learn a little bit, hopefully you're learning something, please hit that thumbs up button for me. That's one of the easiest and best and free ways that you can help me out. So I appreciate you guys, and that's one way you can say that you appreciate me. So anyway, this is an 8 versus dealer 6, an ace 6 versus dealer's 2, and then a 9 versus a dealer's 2. In each of these situations, we would normally hit, and hit, all right, according to basic strategy. However, these all have situations where we can double if the count gets high enough, right? So let's just go through those. An 8 versus dealer's 6, you would double down at a true count of +2 or higher. An ace 6 versus dealer's 2, you're going to double down at a true count of +1 or higher. And a 9 versus dealer's 2 is also going to be a double down at a true count of +1 or higher. Okay, and so when the count gets high enough, and really not too high, right? 2, 1, and 1, plus 2, +1, +1, when the true count gets that high, why should we double down? Well, just like before, there are more high cards left when the count rises, and so therefore, we're likely to pull a 10 value card, right? Or more likely to pull a 10 value than something lower. So by doubling down here, let's say we have $15,000 out there, so we're going to double down. If we are likely to get a 10 value card, so is the dealer, all right? Just because the count is high doesn't mean that only us or only we are going to get a high value card. The dealer's also likely, and so they might go 10-10 to get a total of 26, or even if they get a 10 for 16, then they have lots of options to bust after that. So that's one reason, the 8 versus dealer 6, where it's both kind of dependent on your hand and the dealer's hand. All right, similarly for this one, okay, here a soft 17 is what this one is. You're again likely to get a 10 value card, and so is the dealer. So if you can get a hard 17, they can go 10-10. Now this one in particular is, it's probably a little less likely, and I don't know the exact numbers, but I would say that this one is a little tougher to get because of the dealer's 2 here. I get comments all the time that say, oh, you got to stay away from the dealers 2. You don't want to double that. And you just have to run the numbers yourself. Okay, so the computer doesn't lie. They have lots and lots of simulations where In fact, millions and upon millions of simulations where the computers ran these different amounts, and it tells you that at those counts, that is when it becomes advantageous to do these different deviations. So trust the math and make sure that you are doing them correctly, and you will see the results. All right. So that's gonna bring me to my fourth different type here. Let's see, I'm going this way, and we have a soft 18 versus dealer's 2, a soft 19 versus dealer's 5, and a soft 20 versus a dealer's 6. Okay, these are all soft hands where, again, instead of normally hitting like our last ones that were hard totals here, these ones are soft totals, and so because it's a soft total, you cannot bust by taking another card. And so normally we would stand against these cards. All right, however, when the count gets high enough, for this one at any positive running count, this one it's a little bit dependent on whether it's H17 or S17, so you might want to learn the specific chart that you are having or that you are playing. This one, a soft 19 versus a dealer's 5, there's a deviation to double down at a true count of +1, and a soft 20 versus a dealer's 6. This is a cool one. We're going to learn later about splitting tens, and this has the same index number as a soft 20 versus the dealer's 6, 5, and 4 respectively, and instead of splitting though, we're going to double down our soft 20 versus a dealer's 6 at a true count of +4. Okay, so with all those, when the count is high enough, why, when you have a pretty decent total here, 18, 19, and 20, why would you want to double this? Well, it turns out, like I said before, when there is a high count, there's more high cards left. And so if you have an 18 or a 19, let's say, and you get a 10, you still have an 18 or a 19, okay? Or just like when the count rises, there's more 10s and aces available. Well, in each case with this, an ace would also improve our hand. A 10 keeps those hands the same, an ace improves them by 1. So instead of 18, another ace would be 19, right? Or here, instead of 19, another ace would be 20. And of course, instead of 20, another ace would be 21. All right, in either case, whether you get a 10, which keeps those hands the same, or an ace, which improves it by 1, we would be taking that against the dealer's cards here because they're likely to either maybe not get as high of a total as you or bust, depending on what their up card is. So that is kind of the why behind some of these soft total hands and why we might deviate in those situations. Okay, then the last type, I briefly mentioned it, and that is, some might call it optional, right? But especially if you're playing your locals, maybe, you might be less inclined to split your 10s. But in each case here we have a pair of 10s versus 4s, 5s, and 6s. And for those of you that are maybe a little bit new to Advantage Blackjack, it does not have to be pairs like this. It could be, right, this is also a pair of 10s. It doesn't have to be perfectly matched. Okay, I just wanted to kind of line these up with their kings and queens and jacks. Anyway, that said, what's nice about splitting 10s is it's really easy to remember. You split 10s versus dealer's 4 at a true count of 6, 10s versus dealer's 5 at a true count of 5, and 10s versus dealer's 6 at a true count of 4. So it's kind of backwards. Instead of 4, 5, 6, it's 4, 5, 6 this way, okay, at those index numbers, or when you do the deviation. Now, why would we want to do that when those counts are high? Well, a true count of +4, +5, or +6, those are really high true counts. And when they are that high, just like before, you are likely to get another 10, okay, or an ace. And either way, we'd be happy with that. In fact, if the count still stays high enough, let's say it's still above a true +6, then you would split those even again and keep going. Most places allow you to split up to 3 or sometimes even 4 times. The ones by me, it allows you to split up to 4 times. And then, you know, maybe against, let's say it's this dealer's 4, then you might get a few other hands like this, and the dealer would, in this case, what is that, 12 and 17. So you would lose, win, win, lose. You know, you're likely, again, if the count is that high, to win more than you lose, especially over the long run. Now, does this bring more heat? Yes, it does. Is it the right move? Well, mathematically, yes, it is. And so you just have to kind of weigh those decisions yourself let me put this back here. Let's see, we got our kings over here and our queens and jacks. So it is kind of up to you whether you want to split tens, because it can tend to bring on more heat. Kind of my rule of thumb and kind of what I like to abide by is, if I'm at a casino that is not in my hometown, maybe not even in my home state, I am more likely to split tens when the count calls for it, as opposed to at my locals. Now, have I split tens at my locals before? Absolutely. Do I do it every time? No. To be truthful with you, I do not. Does that bring you more longevity? Maybe. All right, but they're just as likely to pick you off for a different playing decision as splitting 10. So it is kind of up to you, but this whole kind of demonstration here with some of those soft hands, those hard hands, whether you hit and deviate by standing, where you're supposed to stand and deviate by hitting, or even with these where you would normally stand, but you deviate by splitting. Each one of these, I hope you kind of can think through the why behind what you're supposed to do, and maybe rewatch this in some of those different parts, or maybe you have purchased my, I'm not going to show you too much of this, but maybe you've purchased my chart here, which tells you in different situations, H17 versus S17, when you should hit, when you shouldn't hit, when you should stand, shouldn't stand, anything like that. With some of those different deviations. Maybe this will kind of help you conceptualize why you should do what you do instead of just memorizing the chart. So I know for some people, memorizing is just the way that they do it, and they can follow that to a T, and that's great. For other people, though, they kind of really want to know the why behind it, and that's what helps them. And so maybe leave a comment down below. Which type are you? Do you just follow the chart and memorize it to a T? Or are you someone that needs to know why you do what you do? And before you can put that money on the felt, you want to understand what's going on. So either way, hopefully you guys like this video. And until next time, this is A1 Blackjack.